too. So as I was saying, I really hate the neurodiversity movement. I really hate what they're doing in terms of like talking about the neurodiversity spectrum, that it encompasses autism, dyslexia, ADHD, and even some mental health conditions under the same umbrella. I really hate that. I actually don't like the term spectrum either. I like to think of all of these conditions as separate and distinct with their own characteristic symptoms. And I also like to think of them as categorical diagnoses, and I sort of feel the spectrum is a one way, because it suggests in a sense that you have a condition and that it's basically interlinked with the other. Like you have the autism spectrum, which implies that all people with autism have the same condition and it's just a matter of degree. Or you have, and now we're talking about the neurodiversity spectrum, which if you ask me is even worse, where you're lumping all these conditions together under the same umbrella, even though they're radically different. And like I would say that if you look at autism specifically, there are many different types of autism, which I would say are categorical in and of themselves. So you can't really, so an autism spectrum doesn't really make sense, because my type of autism is not the same as someone who can't speak, for example. So it doesn't make any sense to say I'm on the same spectrum as them. If you ask me, I think they're categorical diagnoses that aren't linked at all, if you ask me. I think they have their own neural signatures. They might be related in some respects. I'm not denying that they might have relationships and genetic relationships and that they tend to run in families. I'm not denying that. But what I am saying is that they are fundamentally different, and I prefer looking at it from a more categorical perspective, and I just think that makes more scientific sense, and actually it's less offensive to everyone, because you can't, it's less alienating essentially. I feel that lumping together all these very diverse conditions under the neurodiversity spectrum diminishes autism. Autism used to be seen as a very severe, which indeed it is, trust me. I mean, I don't have it as bad as they come. I mean, talk about someone who can't speak at all, Interestingly, by the way, they never include learning disabilities under the neurodiversity umbrella. I don't know why, because surely learning disability is also a neurodiversity, but they never include it. Now, obviously, I'm glad they don't in a way, because that would be the next level of offensiveness, because learning disabilities, what's positive about having a learning disability? I don't really see it. But at the same time, it also kind of exposes the elitism and the kind of, rather arbitrary inclusion or exclusion of conditions. So autism is included under neurodiversity, but learning disability isn't. That doesn't make much sense. And yet they claim to speak for all autistics. But how can they speak for all autistics if they're excluding learning disabled people? That doesn't make sense. But yeah, I see autism as both a difference and a disability, but I don't see myself as neurodiverse. I hate the word neurodiverse. I mean, to be pedantic about it, everyone is neurodiverse, so the word itself is meaningless. No two brains are alike. So I prefer not to use the word neurodiverse. I prefer to just simply say, I'm autistic and I'm disabled. That's how I approach the matter. The neurodiversity movement alienates me. It alienates me because I feel excluded from it. While I normally accept my autism and I just get on with life, when I read an article from the neurodiversity movement, it actually makes me hate being autistic. Not hating my autism per se, but hating the experience of being autistic, because I have to deal with this shit that if I wasn't autistic I wouldn't have to deal with. Because the neurodiversity movement constantly go on about autism being a gift, when my experience is it's not a gift. And you have these really able, super able autistics who preach from their pulpits, talking, very privileged actually, and you hear them talking and you feel so envious and resentful, because it's like they get all this limelight talking about it, and like properly disabled autistics, it's like we don't exist. We're just sitting at home on benefits because basically we're not good enough for society, and basically society doesn't give a crap about us, even though we want to contribute, and I really want to contribute, but I need the support to do so. With COVID it's even harder, and they never give people like with proper disabilities for help and support to be able to do it. So you have these super able autistics need minimal support, because that's the nature of it, preaching from their high towers about autism being a gift and autism being diversity, and then they have a temerity to then include all these other conditions that have absolutely nothing to do with autism, like dyslexia, under the same umbrella. What next? Are they going to get rid of the autism diagnosis full stop and just talk about neurodiversity? It's doing me in. Basically, people with dyslexia, no offence to anyone with dyslexia who's watching this, who's just dyslexic and not autistic, but if you are dyslexic, you're basically neurotypical with a slight difference in the brain that affects certain areas of cognitive functioning like reading and writing, and some other areas like, I don't know, organisation maybe and stuff like that. But it doesn't affect you in the same, even really severe dyslexia, it might be really impairing and it might give you mental health problems, and I'm not denying it can be really severe and inhibiting. I'm not denying that at all, so don't get me wrong, and it can be really disabling. What I am saying is that it bears no comparison to the severity of a holistic social disorder like autism. It is not the same. You cannot compare them. Like, dyslexics, like I would say again, are basically neurotypical. They're normal people with a slight difference in the brain. You could call them neurodiverse if you want. In actual fact, I personally think that the neurodiversity movement should really only be for dyslexics, who, if you ask me, do fit under the neurodiversity category, and they can go and preach from their pulpits about neurodiversity if they want. Although, having said that, it doesn't include all dyslexics. It actually tends to include those who are pretty high functioning, because those who are functionally literate might not agree that it's just a difference. But those who are like a bit more able, I suppose neurodiversity can accommodate them more. And maybe some people with ADHD might fall under the neurodiversity banner, but not those with more severe ADHD. So yeah, it might include those groups, but like I say, generally speaking, the neurodiversity movement includes people who are very able and who don't really experience severe disabilities. Those who are on benefits, those who are actually excluded from society, basically, you know, quite rightly we feel angry, and I'm not the only one. I know other people who actually go to the group I go to, actually, and if they're watching this, I know who they are, who are also very disabled by their autism, for different reasons. You know, we're all different, but they're all disabled by their autism, and basically also disagree with neurodiversity because they see it as offensive as well, because like me, they're also on benefits and can't work, and see it, and basically the neurodiversity movement like diminishes their experience, and it is just really offensive. And this is what's getting into the media. So now we have people saying that autism is like dyslexia, and it's not, and that's because they don't understand it. And the neurodiversity whole spectrum load of crap doesn't really help matters. It just obfuscates, it like confuses matters. So that's my little rant really. I don't like neurodiversity, I hate it. I'm not neurodiverse, I'm autistic and disabled. The neurodiversity movement means nothing to me, and dyslexia and autism and ADHD and all these other conditions should not be put under the same umbrella when they're radically different conditions. Particularly autism, in fact. Maybe dyslexia and ADHD could be put under a similar level, but then again, I don't know. I mean, dyslexia should really be under the category of specific learning difficulties, which are quite different to ADHD and autism. I mean, the actual cognitive underpinnings of these conditions are radically different. So, for example, both an autistic and someone with dyslexia might both have problems with working memory, but for different reasons. You know, just because you have the same outcome, it can be for different reasons in the brain, like, and affect different cognitive processes. So, you know, it's not like comparing like with like at all. I mean, they're completely different conditions. So, yeah. Anyway, end of rant. Thank you.